While the rest of the college football world is a bit unstable right now and a bit shaky, Iowa football is rock solid headed toward the future, especially in recruiting and assembling this 2023 recruiting class. We will talk the various pieces and, of course, one of the very best offensive linemen in the country committing to Iowa over Alabama. This is our Hawkeyes live show right here at the Voice of College Football each and every week with you. Please leave those comments and questions in the live chat and consider supporting us here at the Voice of College Football. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Also, the Super Chat is available to you as well. And we've done this 49 consecutive times only because of this guy's contributions. Of course, Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Hey, Corey.
How are you, Mark? Good week to be a Hawkeye. Lots of great recruiting news. I know it's a busy time across the country for that when you're in the dead heat of summer, literally and figuratively. Lots to talk about. Lots of really positive momentum on the recruiting trail. We've been saying that for a while now.
You know, if it was dead like it typically is at this time of year, we'd be talking about the new rivals and opponents for Iowa football. But we've got plenty of time to talk about that. Yeah, let's start with the most recent commit, the tight end, Zach Ortworth. Your thoughts about his skills?
Well, I'm going to pull over my notes. So this is, I, of course, published a video. People want to check it out from the Hawkeye of the Storm here on YouTube. But you always try to dig up tape on these kids, and Ortworth was one they needed. I was really excited when he committed, not necessarily because he blows you off the screen with athleticism or his ability to run block. I mean, I think he's solid across the board, but Iowa was just in need of a commitment at that position. As you know, they missed out on Jackson Carver, who committed to Miami. They missed out on George Burhen, who was on campus a couple weeks back. He ended up committing to Purdue. They missed out on Mac Markway, the legacy recruit. He ends up going to play for Brian Kelly. So they needed a commit. And now maybe Burhen, Burhen and Ortworth were on campus the same weekend. Perhaps, this was an understanding from Burhen that Ortworth was probably going to commit and he was higher on Iowa's board. I don't know. That's just speculation. But either way, this was the last guy that I was aware of that Iowa had an offer on at the tight end position. So they needed this kid. And he was wanted by some good schools. I mean, he had a good list. I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but I know he was offered by Wisconsin. He visited Wisconsin. Pittsburgh had him on campus for an official. So, he's a St. Louis kid. St. Louis tends to commit. It seems like they're producing better and better tight ends recently. You watch him in high school at St. Louis University. He runs kind of like a wide receiver. They'll run him out in the slot or they'll run him out wide, but he understands run blocking. He's got good hands. I mean, I looked up after he committed. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who, and he didn't mean anything by it, but he wasn't as excited as me because his response was, well, he wasn't very highly recruited. And I said, do you realize that George Kittle, if you looked at George Kittle's offer list, I mean, like Noah Fant is maybe the highest rated recruit of the past few superstars at Iowa. And I think his best offer was UCLA. And that was the only blue blood Noah Fant had reported having offered him. Sam Laporta, he may have had one other offer, and I think it was a directional school in Michigan. So you cannot judge Iowa tight end recruits by their offer list or their rating. It just doesn't matter. Iowa needed somebody they liked. And frankly, if we are going to look at them according to ranking and other offers, then Zach Ortworth is one of the higher ranked recruits of that group. Now, they have had other guys that had good offers. Elijah Yelverton didn't work out. He ended up quitting football this past season. They've had some guys that Tony Moyaki comes to mind. Certainly he, unfortunately, injuries kind of caught up to him in his NFL career, but he's a really good tight end, fulfilled his potential at Iowa. So, yeah, this is a great ad. I mean, you throw it up there. Is that according to Rivals, number 37 tight end in the country?
That is the 247 Sports Composite.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, no, they needed him and they got him. And now the focus to me turns to receiver. Now, they've got other targets. I guess we can run through them while we're talking about it. Jordan Allen, who was on campus the same weekend as Proctor and Ortworth and all those guys. Jordan Allen's a defensive end. He did name Iowa in his top 4. The other 3 schools that are listed by Allen, Iowa State, Kansas State, and Mizzou. So we'll see where he ends up heading. And then Kendrick Gilbert, as we know, listed Iowa in his top 4 as well. And I don't have the top 4 for him in front of me. I know it was Iowa, LSU, Purdue, and Kentucky, I believe. I think I have that right. And then Iowa did get some good news, too, from Texas. Iowa hasn't been, they're not as active as they used to be, back when they had Texas coaches like Hayden Fry and Don Patterson. But they're in on a pair of cornerbacks from Louisville. They're actually twins, interestingly enough. Iowa's had some success on the basketball court with twins, as you well know, Keegan and Chris Murray. But Caden and Cameron Jenkins both have Iowa in their final 5. And I did tweet this out that it should be noted there are 3 common schools between the top 5s, one being Oregon, one being SMU, and one being Iowa. Excuse me, Oregon State. Correct that. Oregon State, SMU, and Iowa. So Cameron Jenkins' top 5 is Oregon State, Grambling State, UTSA, Iowa, and SMU. Caden's top 5 is Oregon State, Baylor, Iowa, SMU, and Arkansas. So a bit of I think Caden is a bit higher, considered a bit higher in the class than Cameron, but they're both both got a nice list of offers. If I'm Cameron, certainly you can't predict what a kid's going to do, and when he's got an offer, these HBCUs can sometimes pull a kid in ways you don't expect. So he's got Grambling there, which is an HBCU. However, if you're just looking at those 3, assuming those kids want to play together, and I'm making that assumption, they're twins. I mean, I think there is actually studies that have shown that twins have a hard time being apart, right, Mark?
I've seen more than studies. I know, I don't want to make it sound like 50 different examples, but several, 3 or 4 or 5 examples of twins that I know of that have gone through life and basically step for step stayed with each other through jobs, location, the whole deal. Yeah, they're very attached.
So if you're looking at it from that perspective, then, and we're extrapolating, but if we are, then we're looking at Oregon State, SMU, and Iowa. Obviously, from a conference positioning standpoint, I mean, it's not even close. So right now, Iowa is more than secure. SMU is, what they have been for a number of years now. And Oregon State could be in some big trouble, as you well know. I mean, will they end up in the Big 12? Will they end up in the Mountain West? Will the Pac-12 survive? So, yeah, I mean, this conference realignment, and it kind of brings us to that topic somewhat. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this podcast discussing it because we got tons of Iowa topics, but that is recruiting certainly could come into play with conference realignment with someone like a Cameron or a Caden Jenkins. So good momentum for Iowa on the recruiting trail. You get Zach Ortworth. You're in the top 5 for a couple of defensive linemen that were on campus a little over a week ago. Still nothing from a couple of the other guys, in-state linebacker Ison Newsom, Logan Howland, tackle from the Hun School, plays with Marco Linez. I still feel pretty good about his recruitment, but I don't know. I know that a podcaster went on the record and gave his final 2 schools out. I was told that was supposed to be off the record, but I'll let people search that. I don't want to be the one that divulges it, but Iowa is definitely in the running late. Let's just say that in his recruiting process. So, yeah, I mean, like I say, you get Caden Proctor to commit. We haven't really talked about that on this show, Mark. I know you and I both spent time discussing it off the air, but that's only going to help recruiting. I did say when you and I were discussing it the other day, I think it's somewhat unfortunate that Proctor's announcement came on the same day that the USC-UCLA news broke because, I mean, you think about that story, the UCLA-USC news, that is the biggest story that college football, likely the biggest story in college football for the entire calendar year. You could argue it's one of the biggest stories of the decade, of this century. And that's not hyperbole. It really is. And so for Caden Proctor, the highest rated Iowa recruit ever to commit to Iowa the same day as that news, I just think it's a bit unfortunate. And so people may say I'm taking a glass half empty approach. I'm certainly excited about Caden Proctor news, and I'm by no means saying that it won't help recruiting. I think it has, and I think it will continue to help recruiting. But it's just a bit unfortunate because it would have been one of the bigger stories in college football that day, and it probably still was, but it wasn't the biggest.
Yeah, I think that your concerns are valid. There's no question. He is still the same football player. He still brings the same
Yeah.
quality to the roster. And maybe when the dust settles and all this expansion talk um, makes its way off the headlines, and then of course the recruits themselves and the players themselves at the high school level are in their own world in regards to making their decisions, and they'll take note of Caden Proctor is an Iowa Hawkeye. He's made that decision. That tells me something, and there's an impact there. But in regards to the splash that any program would like to have, that was taken away because of the news elsewhere.
Yeah. So I just Iowa fans. I think I even saw a bit of the distract. I mean, that story, the USC UCLA news, just took over college football, even the local news beat, and it's like, again, for Proctor to commit when he did, and he did not go on television. He did not go on CBS Sports HQ or a local station. And nothing against kids that do that, but that just speaks to who he is. I know he did speak with KCCI following his announcement and basically said that what he said to KCCI was that he did have schools offering him 6 figures per year. He had schools offering him 7 per year. I mean, so he basically did not imply. There was a report out there by another podcaster. There was a report that Iowa had offered him a 7-figure or gotten a deal for a 7-figure deal and a car. That's not what Proctor said. Now, that's his business. I mean, he doesn't have to divulge it, I don't think. But it sounds like he went to Iowa because he grew up here and he believes Iowa can put him in the NFL. And he's just not concerned with the NIL side of things. He understands he's going to get NIL money. He will certainly get NIL money. I already know about at least 1 or 2 deals that he's working on right now. So I just think his interview and hearing from him, he's a mature young man. And we're not just talking about physically, because he's certainly mature. When you're 6'7", 6'8", you're 335. Yeah, I mean, he's put together. But it seems like he's got a great head on his shoulders. And Iowa's got a chance to ride Wampa and Proctor from a recruiting standpoint into territory they haven't been in since Kirk Ferentz was here. And that's encouraging. Iowa fans should be very excited. I know we still have concerns for the coming season on offense, but the future on offense, even without a change in philosophy, I think Iowa needs to change some of its philosophy. We've talked about that. But even if you don't, you're going to be able to operate under the premise of we run the ball first to set up the pass, even if it's this zone scheme that some people have a problem with. I don't know enough about running the football to be able to tell you if that's the problem or part of the problem or not. But you have Caden Proctor, Trevor Lauk. You got a bunch of guys who are have potential size. I mentioned Logan Howland, if he can. I mean, his top 4, I can tell you his top 4 that he's actually announced: Oklahoma, Miami, Iowa, and now I'm forgetting the 4th. Michigan. Michigan's the 4th, and Michigan needs some help, as you and I were discussing. They're struggling on the recruiting beat right now in 23. So just positive momentum, and that's what you got to talk about in the summertime. It's exciting.
Talking about a top 10 player in the nation, regardless of position. And so this was a strong, you were pleased with the Iowa recruiting haul to this point prior to Proctor, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the highest rated player on the board is at 346. And again, I don't think Corey and neither one of us want to make too much of the numbers, but the numbers do come home to roost when taken in total. But
yes.
Obviously, yes, there are all sorts of players that are not even going to be ranked lowly that turn out to be tremendous players. They're going to be busts. We know that. And there's going to be a lot of them on both sides. It's not just 1 or 2. There are aberrations on both sides, plenty of them. But we're talking about the average recruiting class is going to be somewhere between 20 and 23, something in that range in the country. And there's 65 Power 5 teams. So if I can do the math here, there's going to be 13 or 1,400 players signed in a recruiting class. So you're going to have plenty of aberration, but we know that the numbers and the rankings mean something significant. And if the class, you're pleased with the class prior to Proctor, and he's a top 10 player in the country, those guys just don't come along very often, aside from about 5-6 programs in the country.
And Mark, I think I've said this before. Marco Lainez, I believe, is underrated right now. He was a 4-star at one time. I don't know why he slipped to a 3-star per these different sites. I think he's underrated. I'm very pleased with how Liddell Betts and George Barnett, obviously I'm sure he's involved to some extent, and Brian Ferentz are recruiting running backs. So, when you're talking about liking your quarterback of 23 and really liking your running back of 23 and really liking your offensive line in 23 and having a program that is exceptional at developing tight ends, wide receiver. So from a personnel perspective, I like Keegan Johnson. I like Arlen Bruce, but they still need to do work at that position. So there's the concern. Can they lure a wide receiver in? I don't know the answer to that. They missed out on Jerron Tibbs. They've got a kid coming to Iowa City in September per Blair Sanderson of Rivals. So they're going to have opportunities, but they've missed on some guys. And that's going to be that's just going to continue to be a position of concern. The good news is, even though Iowa hasn't used the portal this year, like they could go, if they struggle in the 23 class, they could just say, potentially, hey, we just missed a ton at that position. If we can at least impress some people this fall, and that's going to take a lot because a lot of this personnel we're talking about ain't even be on campus yet. But if we can at least show that we're willing to throw the football a bit more and throw it effectively, maybe we can lure somebody in the transfer portal that changes the dynamic. That's the thing. If you miss in recruiting now, there is the fallback of the transfer portal. And assuming Iowa has this collective in place that we've heard about, then that's going to be a little bit more lucrative. And these transfer portal guys will understand that, hey, I'm coming in. Even if they have 1 year left, I've said it before, I think Proctor will play right away. And you hope you can get some development out of the guys this year. It could be a somewhat more attractive because Iowa's just never been real attractive, at least not under Kirk. It's not been real attractive for top-notch receivers, and understandably so. But it might become more attractive if they can at least make some headway through the year this year.
I smirked because the obvious punchline there is whether anyone's informed Iowa that there is a transfer portal.
They do have a tight end coming in this year, Mark. Let me defend Kirk for a second.
Yeah.
Well, but they obviously know there's a portal because they used it.
Sure.
And they also know there's a portal because they've lost 6 guys to the portal.
But I think I got these numbers from you. You put together an aggregate of the Big Ten.
Yeah.
You either took it from somewhere else or you posted it yourself and ran through the numbers. And Iowa had, to Iowa's credit, had only lost 3. And that was the low number in the Big Ten as well.
Yeah, now it's up to 4, but I believe it's still the low number. They are all on offense. Every single one of those players has been an offensive player. And I think I think you look at it and say it's a concern, right? But the bottom line is they have guys this year that they've got your clear top 3 at receiver and Nico Reganey, Arlen Bruce, and Keegan Johnson. Can you develop Jacob Bostic? Can you develop Brody Brecht? Can you develop Deontay Vines? They've got guys. If those guys can develop, it takes a lot of pressure off recruiting for 23, and they got time for 24. So, but yeah, no needs for 23. Now that they've got Ortworth, to me, yeah, I think they're going to land somebody they like at defensive line. Unless if Jordan Allen and Kendrick Gilbert both pick someone else, yeah, then I'll be like, okay, they need to do some work there as well. But they do have Maddox Borcherding Johnson coming in next year, who, by the way, I just talked to today. We'll be releasing a show in the coming weeks with him. So it's not like they're bare at that position in 23, but wide receiver is the position that they need to work on.
Corey, you have fan clubs forming in the live chat as we speak.
I do?
Well, we've got...
who are the fan clubs?
Our Oregon fan, Eric, says, I like this guy's energy.
Oh, thank you, Eric.
We have,
quack, quack.
Who else do we have? We've got quite a few here. I'm not going to post one of these because it's detrimental to another contributor, but Cole basically said that he enjoys your analysis, likes you, as he phrased it there. And then we've got Spark CWC. Spark CW routinely has coined me a king of sorts, but now I thought I was the only one for a long time.
No, I'm usurping your throne, Mark.
Apparently. Then we've got Ed, my favorite Hawkeye. Now, Ed may hate all Hawkeyes. I don't know, but you're his favorite.
He's not a Hawkeye fan, right? Because he's on your other channels.
He's a Michigan. Ooh, I better not say. He's either an Ohio State or Michigan fan, and that's a bad mistake to make. Right? So I do a bad job of keeping track of everyone's. I just can't keep track of everyone's allegiances if they're not on the avatar themselves. But I guess he's making a prediction for the Iowa UCLA matchup in football that's going to be scheduled at some point.
10-9, sure. As long as it's Iowa, who cares? Nobody cares, right? You win 10-9, and that could very well be the score of a game that's played against the Bruins in late November in Iowa City. I'm looking forward to that.
In springtime, would like you not to wear the Nebraska colors.
This hoodie's got some sentimental value. I've had it for a long, long time. This isn't Nebraska colors, but this is gray and burgundy.
Yeah.
It's not the bright, gross red.
All right. Very good. This is our Hawkeye show, folks. We're here every Tuesday. We would love for you to not only enjoy it yourself, but you know what you could do? Bring some folks with you. So get on social media, or if you have direct contact with other people that love college football, if you notice, we've got Nebraska fans, typically Ohio State and Michigan fans, all sorts of different fan bases here. Of course, our priority is to talk Iowa and get Hawkeye fans here, but Erica's here. Good to see Erica, a loyal viewer. But we're here every Tuesday at 4:30 Central. 4:30 Central. So again, make it an appointment every week.
Mark, should we answer the question in the chat that just popped up? It's a good one from Zach.
Sure.
Biggest concern, how can Hawks have an improved O-line when they lose an all-time best center and another starter? Great question from Zach. And let's remember, Zach, they actually lose 2 starters because Cody Ince was a starter. I know he's dealt with some injuries, as did Kyler Schott. It's a great question. You have to hope that the development is there. As you know, Mark, summer conditioning is most important for your guys in the trenches. And so some of Iowa's problems last year certainly came down to fundamentals, which is a concern, but those things can be corrected. Strength can only be corrected in the summer, right? So off-season conditioning is of utmost importance with that position all across the offensive line, Zach. But that is a concern. And if we go back to the spring practice that we all saw, right? The open spring practice, Iowa's offensive line did not look good. So I've never went on the record and said I think Iowa's offensive line is going to be really improved, but they need to be. If the offensive line is as bad as it was last year, and it was bad, I know some people are going to take offense to that, but it was not good. Looked a lot better against Kentucky. Was that an aberration? We'll find out. But if it cannot be better than it was last year, I don't know how the offense operates, because Spencer Petras, he's never going to be a mobile guy. You hope that he has lost some weight. Not that he was overweight, but that he's trimmed down, like Tony Graciopi brought up on my show. We've heard that from the coaching staff, that he's trimmed down, is in better shape. He's a little bit more mobile now, but he's never going to be real mobile. You hope he can step up in the pocket to evade pressure at times. You hope he can, he's not going to be Nate Stanley either, but he's going to have to figure out a way to work despite a pocket that collapses within 2 seconds. And I don't know if that's the what is this?
We've got our buddy Levi's here.
Oh, I'm sure they want to talk about Iowa State, Mark. Don't you think? Don't they want to talk about Iowa State? Hey, what was the comment here from Levi up here in the chat? I saw one earlier. Is this the same Levi? Yeah, it is. What is Iowa's plan for paying Kirk Ferentz's $42 million buyout after this season when he goes 4-8? Yeah, so if Iowa goes 4-8 this year, you may never see me again, Mark. So as much as I don't believe that Iowa's going to win 10 games this year if the offense doesn't substantially make a move, they're not losing 8 games on the regular season schedule. I think that's good. I'm glad Levi brought up the question. What is the floor for this Iowa football team, Mark?
The floor.
I think the
Well,
floor is 6-6.
I have the schedule handy here.
Maybe I could squint and see 5-7, but I think the reasonable floor is 6-6,
The
and the
reasonable floor.
ceiling is probably 10-2. I have a hard time saying that's if the offense gets substantially better.
Yeah, the very basement is 5-7.
But Levi says we're going 4-8, so we'll talk to him in
Can't
September.
imagine. I can't imagine. It's going to be a difficult race for me to handicap. I know that. I'm going to have to dig deep and really think this one through in regards to Iowa, Nebraska, Purdue, Minnesota, Wisconsin in this division.
And remember, we've said it before. We're going to be getting into schedule previews. I'm sure you're going to start those later this month, my guess. Let's remember that Purdue is the one team with the favorable schedule. Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa's, their crossover schedules are difficult. And it doesn't normally work out that way, but it does this year. So Purdue is a dark horse. And Nebraska's a dark horse. People don't like me saying that. The four heavyweights that have proven themselves are those teams we just mentioned, but Nebraska has made a lot of changes. I don't expect them to make a big jump, but as we've talked about before, Scott Frost has put all his chips in the middle of the table because I think he recognizes if it don't work this year, he's done. And I don't know, would he end up back in the group of five maybe as a head coach? I mean, if you can't get a single winning season together at Nebraska, he would probably get a job somewhere, but you're talking about a substantial drop off. So he's got 1 year to prove himself. And I would not be shocked to see them in the race at least some point this season. But they could also end up 3-9, 4-8 because Scott Frost teams find ways to lose games. Kirk Ferentz teams find ways to win games. And that's a compliment to the Iowa coaching staff.
That last statement that you made seems kind of contrite, but it's the truth. It's been proven now. Okay, taking the Frost side of it, he walked in, he lost his first 6 games. You're turning over a program, a roster. I can look past that. And the way they finished his first season, they took Iowa to the last play of the game, right? An Iowa team that turned out to be a really good team.
Yeah, when was his first season?
That would have been 2018, correct? That was, Iowa beat them on a last-second field goal.
Racinos, yeah, I believe. No, that was that Racinos? Yeah.
Like 31-28, something like that.
Yeah, sounds right.
The Ohio State game, they took them to the wire. That's an Ohio State team that finished in the top 3 in the country. Like they looked real. They won 4 of the last 6, and those were the 2 losses. Like they looked like a completely different team. And I thought Scott Frost magic. He just won a Peach Bowl over a top 10 Auburn team, and now he comes to Nebraska, and they look like this the last 6 games of the year. They're off and running. Nope, they have the worst 1-score record in the country during his tenure. And they just continue to find ways to, like, Les Miles used to give me the best material to go off of coaches blowing games. I used to do practically a Les Miles video weekly about how he would blow football games. Scott Frost hasn't reached that level, but he certainly gave me enough scenarios last year to say, what were you thinking? This happened, this happened, this happened, this happened in the fourth quarter, and this is how you responded. These are the decisions you made. They don't make any sense.
And by the time we got to the Iowa game, like as an Iowa fan, Iowa fans were nervous, or I was nervous watching that game in the fourth quarter. But if you recall that game, Mark, it just like you knew at some point in the beginning of the fourth quarter, it's like, no, here we go again. If I'm a Nebraska fan, like they panned out to the crowd and you could tell Nebraska fans they knew what was happening. They knew that train had started off the rails, and it did. I mean, you have a blocked punt that's caught midair and returned for a touchdown. I mean, you have, I don't even remember the rest of what happened in that game, but I mean, I know that was the big play that changed things. I'm sure Martina I can't even think of the kid, Smothers. I know he made a mistake or two, but they find ways to lose games. And if anybody wants to argue that Iowa doesn't find ways to win games, or the haters want to argue that, I mean, let's just look at the schedule. I'm going to read through some of these games, Mark. We know week 1 was a blowout against Indiana, who was terrible. They were 2-10. We thought they were good. as the season started. We hyped that game up, but they were terrible.
To defend Iowa's performance in that game, not that it needs to be defended, but in regards to Indiana being the opponent that eventually was, yes, 2-10. I don't think that Indiana team in week 1 was anything close to what that Indiana team was in November.
True. Like very good point. Very good point, because they had Michael Penix healthy at that point.
Yeah, they were that team was good enough, that Indiana team, to be down to Cincinnati by 6 points with like 5 minutes left in the game.
That's an
with the ball
point.
inside the 10-yard line to take the lead on Cincinnati.
That is an excellent point. And we're talking about a Cincinnati team that ended up in the playoff. No, great point, Mark, because I think I maybe don't give Iowa enough credit for that performance too. And Iowa made Indiana look straight up bad in that game. So 34-6, you give them credit for that. They went on the road, and I'd say a 10-point win on the road at Iowa State with game day there is a very impressive. That's not by no means a close game. It wasn't close. I believe it was 17, and then Iowa State got a late garbage touchdown.
That was a strong performance. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
And then
I watched every play of that game.
The Kent State-Colorado State games were close for a period of time. Iowa ends up winning both games by double figures. Iowa-Maryland. So once you get past Iowa-Maryland, which we know is a blowout, and Iowa ends up as a top 10 team at that. Go ahead, Mark.
Can I back up? I'm trying to catch up with your analysis and throw mine in a little bit there too. Now, teams of top 15 status, which whatever I ranked Iowa at the end of the year, I don't know what they were ranked. They were barely in the top 25. I had them ranked a little higher than the national polls. They should dispose of Kent State and Colorado State in much easier fashion.
Agreed. Although they did win. I mean, the Kent State game was 30-7. So,
okay. But I think it was pretty close at halftime.
It was tight. Both those games made you nervous. I believe they were behind at halftime against Colorado State. So, no, you're right. No, that was, we probably should have, as Iowa fans, seen the warning signs at that point. But then you come back against a Maryland team that was undefeated at the time and just absolutely disintegrate them on the road under the lights. You had Maryland students leaving at like halftime of that game, at a night game. So, they're certainly, that is absolutely worthy. That's a valid point.
Wisconsin takes care of those two teams in more impressive fashion.
Absolutely. However, so after that, you're 5-0. All the hype around the Penn State game, they go into that game. You're down by 2 scores early, and without a viable passing game, without a viable run game. Now, Clifford goes out of the game. I get it. But again, we're talking about finding ways to win games. Iowa finds a way. They force several false starts in a row due to the crowd noise and the Penn State backup not being able to hear, the center not being able to hear his quarterback. So, I mean, like that's a perfect example of finding a way to win a game against one of the better teams. At least we thought to be one of the better teams in the country at that point. Iowa then loses to Purdue and loses to Wisconsin. Those games weren't close. So that's the frustrating part. The losses weren't close. But Northwestern, they had to grit their teeth and find a way to win 17-12. That was not a very good Northwestern team. Alex Padilla played the majority of that game. I was frustrated with some play calling late. Tyler Goodson was on the sidelines for reasons unbeknownst to me. Mark, do you have something to add on that one?
Yes, I'm raising my hand throughout your analysis of the season when I have a point to make. Northwestern had the ball in the red zone to win the game, correct?
I don't believe they were in the red zone. I don't believe they were in the red zone, no. You have a good memory, but I think you're wrong on that one. They did have the ball, though. No, they had the ball. They had the ball, but I don't believe it ever got down there. But you're right. I mean, 17-12 at Evanston with that Northwestern team. No, I think
what I'm remembering is that Iowa made an interception maybe in the end zone or down near the goal line in the fourth quarter.
I believe Dane Belton had an interception somewhere, and it sealed the game, yes. With that being said, they found a way to win the game. Now, should you have to find a way to win at Northwestern, last year? Probably not, but they did. Same at home against Minnesota. That was a good Minnesota team, Mark. A Minnesota team that finished 9-4, knocked off Wisconsin, obliterated Levi Stevenson's conference, his representative in West Virginia.
Lost to Bowling Green.
But hey, beat West Virginia.
Sure.
And 27-22, again, questionable play calling late. Iowa deliberately does not go for the touchdown late in that game, ends up having to settle for a field goal, which gave Minnesota a chance to go down and win the game. I remember talking with Don Patterson afterward. I was actually on Kirk Ferentz's side. I was like, hey, it makes sense. You want to run clock off on first and second down. And Don's like, you score. Just go in there and score. Like, stop. We're not messing around. And I think Kirk Ferentz, I mean, remember after the game, he even admitted that was not the right decision in hindsight, but they won the game, Mark. So a lot of this you put on special teams, a lot of this you put on defense. Illinois, that was a close game. They're down 2 scores. Charlie Jones pops off a kickoff return for a touchdown, and they end up winning by 10. All right. Nebraska, they're down big. Come back to win that game. They make a quarterback change. I didn't think Petras was great late in that game, but he did enough. Iowa gets a big run by Tyler Goodson, which ends up with a Spencer Petras sneak. They score on the touchdown. They end up getting the blocked punt return for a touchdown. They beat the Huskers 28 to 21. So my point is, like, it's amazing. That's a 10-2 year, Mark. A 10-2 year in the Big Ten Conference. And they were down 2 scores against Penn State at home. They were down 2 scores to Illinois at home. Okay. Northwestern had the ball with a chance to win at home on the last possession. Minnesota had the ball with a chance to win on the road on the last possession. Iowa won every single one of those games. So I'm just saying, like, the margin for error is somewhat thin when you're talking about those close games. So it does affect how you perceive things. Like, it's impressive that Iowa finds ways to win games, and they're the opposite of Nebraska, who finds ways to lose games. But a few more plays for Nebraska, and they're 9-3. A few more plays for Iowa, they're 4-8. Or few less plays for Iowa, they're 4-8. That's the margin we're dealing with here. So, do I believe that Iowa will go 4-8 with a tougher schedule this year? I don't, because I don't think all of a sudden Iowa teams are going to find ways to lose every close game like Nebraska. They're too well coached. But it is possible, especially with a tougher schedule, to lose some close games, because guess who also knows how to win close games? Michigan, Ohio State. I mean, the best teams in the conference, although they do blow teams out. Ohio State doesn't probably play a ton of close games, but you're good because you know how to win close games. Wisconsin's another example of a team that knows how to win close games. And Iowa's got all of those teams in the schedule. They play at Ohio State. They're home against Michigan. They're at Purdue. They play Minnesota. In addition to the rest of your, I mean, we don't know what Nebraska's going to be. We don't know what Brett Bielema in Illinois is going to be. Will Pat Fitzgerald bounce back? It's a tough schedule. And I'm still not really looking forward to a trip to Piscataway to play a Greg Schiano Rutgers team that I think is going to be improved. Last time Iowa was there, they won by 7. So it's going to be an exciting season. I can't wait to talk about it more, but you just know you're going to get close games when you're an Iowa fan.
You know what this makes me want to do? Because I hear from time to time I'll be on with somebody like yourself, and they'll mention that, I went back and I rewatched the whatever game from last season, and I think about these games and I think, yeah, I would love to sit down. I just don't have the time for it, and I would have a zillion different games that I would want to watch to sit down and rewatch these games. They had the ball, Northwestern did, on the fringe of the red zone at the 25 when they threw one of the interceptions in the fourth quarter, and then the final one, they got it out to close to midfield at the 42. Let me phrase it this way. I don't think I've asked you this question. While Iowa was technically, in a sense, the second best team in the conference, or finished second, made the championship game, the 21 Iowa team was in what place in the Big Ten in regards to, if you ranked the teams, the quality of the teams in the Big Ten?
Why do you ask me these questions? It's almost like you're like a member of the. You're trying to just get me, aren't you? You're just throwing out these little gotchas, because
I'll let you know what I think.
I know, but I'll tell you what I think too, and some people aren't going to like hearing it. I'll just say it, Mark. They're below Ohio State. We're talking about last year, right? In the final, I would put them below Ohio State, below Michigan State, below Purdue, and below Wisconsin. They won the West, which is a product of a variety of things that we just outlined, including schedule. I don't believe in luck, but the Penn State, Sean Clifford getting knocked out of that game, that's just part of football. The ball drops your way, things go your way at times. Those are all, but I don't know how you can really argue that when you look at how badly Iowa got beat by Purdue at home and how badly they got beat on the road at Wisconsin. You can say it's one game, but those games weren't even close. So, not saying those will be, I'm not saying that's my projection this year, but what are your thoughts?
I listed off the same teams. It's funny that we start with Ohio State. Michigan won the Big Ten. Ohio State, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Purdue. I'm right there with you. And I tend to think that even Penn State was better.
Yeah, so that's a tough one because, again, we didn't get a healthy Clifford for the whole year. But, Penn State also lost. Then they lose the Illinois game, the 9 overtime game.
Yeah, they lost 6 games by the end of the season.
Yeah, so, you lose 6 games, you lose 6 games. I think Nebraska was closer to all of those teams we just mentioned than probably anybody would give them credit for. But again, the ability to win close games, having those things go your way. Minnesota, Iowa won that game, but it was a close game at home. They ended up 9-4 and beat Wisconsin. So I think we can sum all this up by admitting the Big Ten is pretty darn good top to bottom. They're probably not as good as the SEC right now, but they are good top to bottom. And somebody's got to lose games. Nebraska found that out the hard way because I don't think Nebraska's 3-9 bad. They weren't 3-9 bad, but they found ways to lose 9 games.
Spark CW desperately wants opinion on Subway. I am not making any comments. I've learned from the past. I'm not going to make any comments on a potential sponsor.
Right.
That's what I'm going to say.
You're the next Jared. Remember the Eat Fresh guy that didn't eat?
No, I'm not. Why? Are you telling me something?
No, if Subway
I need to lose 100 pounds.
No, but if Subway came to you, Mark, and said, "Hey, I want to sponsor the Iowa channel. We'll pay you $10,000 a month," you would be all over that, and you'd have a Subway each and every show. You would be eating one every single show. All right.
Absolutely, I would. It's only been about 3 or 4 days since I had Subway, so I'll answer it that way.
So you do like Subway? A lot of people don't like Subway.
I'm going to answer it that way.
What way? You've had it recently?
Go to restaurants that you like. You don't always choose. Sometimes there's something called convenience.
Okay, that's true. That's true. I wouldn't rank Subway as my favorite sub place in the world. You guys have Jersey Mike's out there? You have to, right?
Yes. My son actually got me a number of restaurant gift cards for my birthday, including Jersey Mike's, because he knows I like it.
It'd be great if Jersey Mike's wanted it. Maybe I should reach out to Jersey Mike's.
Tell him the voice of college football frequents there on a regular basis.
And myself.
The local Jersey Mike's would probably be more impressed with you frequenting there.
Well, maybe not me, but that would be a good conversation because I think Jersey Mike's are popping up across Iowa. We just got one here in Ames about maybe a year or two ago. They're good.
We just got one here maybe 6 months ago.
Now, we'll say this, and I promise we'll get back to I'm going to move on after this. So for the people who are like, God, why are we talking about this? I just want to get everybody's opinion on this. I won't say what place it was, okay? But it was a sub place, very much like the ones we just mentioned. I'm not saying if it was one of them or not, but a sub place like that, very famous national chain. And I got their large Philly cheesesteak sandwich, okay? And I think I got a drink with it and a small bag of chips, right? So you get the combo. How much do you think that should cost? I was there for lunch. A large Philly cheesesteak sandwich with a drink and some chips. What should that cost?
Well, pricing has gone out of sight all over the place. So I'll say I stopped at McDonald's the other day. I think I mentioned that to you because I was like, I really didn't want to do this. Was after you just had a nice dinner at Olive Garden. And I was like sandwiched between like 2 live streams, and I just run down to McDonald's because I hadn't eaten all day. It was $15.55. I still remember the number. That's how I remember numbers for just a standard like Big Mac meal. So, wow. Yeah, prices are.
Well, I'll just tell you that sandwich, chips, and a drink cost me $17. $17 for a sandwich for lunch.
Is it a foot long?
Yeah, it's at least a foot. Yeah,
One of those.
but I finished the whole thing. I mean, it's
Okay.
great. I mean, I love, and I
I,
will say,
I think I could guess where you went.
I don't think you could.
Oh, okay. Maybe I couldn't.
We'll talk about it
Because
after
I've
we.
probably never heard of it then.
No, you probably
Oh,
have it out there. Maybe you will guess it.
Erica, thank you so much for the contribution. Appreciate that. Have you guys heard the rumors about PJ Fleck? What are your thoughts on them? Also, please gently press the like button, everyone. Thank you so much for that, Erica.
I think I want to get, first of all, I want to get your perspective on, have you been following the PJ Fleck
No,
stories?
no, nothing about it.
I haven't been on top of that story more than, as much as some people have been, but I guess there's just talk from former players that they really don't like PJ. Am I summing that up correctly? I haven't done enough reading. I know you're a big PJ Fleck fan, Mark, so you ought to read up on this, but there is some substance from former players that it doesn't sound like PJ is the most liked coach. And I think the perception prior was everyone else around him in the conference didn't like PJ, but his coaches loved him. And I don't know if that's true. So if somebody has some insight on this story, because I haven't had the opportunity to read it yet, share it in the chat.
I tried about 3 different Google searches to come up with something, and the first thing I came up related to it was that players past and present defend PJ Fleck. So that's obviously in response to the initial.
Yeah, Andy says that current players talking about his me first attitude. So again, I need to do more reading up on this, but that surprises me a little bit because like even the guys that you don't like as an opponent, typically they're winning because somebody likes them, like the players like them. That's hard to believe that PJ Fleck's players don't like him and they're winning. Like they're not winning Big Ten championships, but they're winning. They're consistently good.
Yeah, and he's not recruiting like top 10 classes and they're underachieving but still winning. They are playing at least if not exceeding expectations, exceeding their recruiting rankings.
And I've also heard the exact opposite of what some of these players are allegedly saying, that they just think he's a great man, a great human being. So it does surprise me. This could also be a scenario where you have a few disgruntled players. And I don't want to equate it to what some of the accusations about Kirk Ferentz were in 2020, but there are a lot of black players, white players who have come to the defense of Kirk Ferentz and said, no, I loved Kirk Ferentz. So everybody has different experiences. When you have hundreds of guys going through your program on a year in, year out basis, everybody's going to have different opinions, different experiences. That's normal. That's part of life. I think, and here we go on my soapbox, but as a human being, when you find out that you've offended someone or that you mistreated someone, maybe unintentionally, and I'm not trying to defend PJ Fleck, but what you do as a human being, if you're actually trying to become a better human being, is you make it right. So I think I'd like to give Kirk Ferentz the benefit of the doubt that he offended some people, whether it be he wasn't, he turned a blind eye to some of the things that were going on with Chris Doyle and even his son and Seth Wallace, or he just didn't have enough oversight, or whatever the case may be. You got to, even when you're not in the wrong, if you feel you're not in the wrong, the right thing to do is to make amends. So for the sake of PJ Fleck, I have nothing against him. I think he's kind of annoying at times, but for the sake of Fleck, because I think the conference is better when Minnesota's good. And, there was a stretch there where Minnesota wasn't very good, and the West is already perceived as the weaker division. It would be nice if Minnesota can stay relevant, because that's a good program up there. And I'm surprised by some of the rumors, but again, I'm not read up on this enough to really comment too extensively on the substance of the allegations against Fleck.
Yeah, again, we're talking about a coach who has 105 players on the roster. He's been there for roughly 5 years. You could have 2 or 3 guys speak out. If you collected all the negative comments made to my channel about me and you lined them all up and had somebody read them all off, I would look like a complete idiot.
Yeah.
And that's not defending PJ Fleck, because maybe they had valid concerns. It's also a competitive atmosphere where there's going to be a portion of players that
they feel like they should be
don't
playing.
like how they were evaluated because they think that they should be first string and they're third string or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation about that just the other day. You know, there are guys that played for Hayden Fry that I know that that is not unique to anybody. That's just like you just said. You brought it up earlier with these recruiting classes. There are going to be a lot of guys that don't see the field, and I've never even been podcasting for years. And when I did radio, I wasn't doing player interviews and recruiting interviews. So since I've done this channel and kind of expanded the podcast and worked with you, I've done a lot more player interviews than I ever have. And I just made this comment earlier today to someone, because I just talked to Maddox Borcherding Johnson earlier today, Iowa defensive tackle commit for 23. And this is going to sound sappy, and I'm not trying to make it sound that way, but the more players you talk to, especially as high school athletes that have committed here and they're excited to be at Iowa, at least the ones I've talked to, you just naturally want to root for these kids because it just seems like so many of the kids, and I'm not saying anything about previous classes, but so many of the kids in the 22 class, 23 class that's committed, they just seem like really nice kids. And yet you realize they're so excited to be there. They think they're going to be, they're going to the NFL or they're going to be All-Americans or All-Conference and they're going to, break records. And some of them will never see the field. And it is sort of depressing when you look at it from that perspective because you want all of them to succeed. And I think that also you got to give credit to the Iowa coaching staff because Iowa recruits guys that for the most part, you're always going to have bad eggs, but for the most part, Iowa, I think recruits guys with high character. I'll throw Maddox and, I was really impressed with Maddox discussing his life this morning and what his family's meant to him, his mom specifically. I'll kind of tease that. His mom really means a lot to him. Aaron Graves, he's a guy that talked to back in, I think, December. He's already a college graduate before he gets onto campus. And he's a small town Iowa guy. So some of that is just the fact that some of these guys are Iowa kids. And I'm not talking down on anybody from any other state or area, but I think when you grow up from smaller roots, some of these kids like Aaron Graves grew up in Dayton, Iowa, home of the Dayton Rodeo, sometimes those roots, those humble roots, they do keep you humble, even when the big schools come calling. And so it's I've found it refreshing to get to know some of these recruits, but it is sometimes it's sad to think that some of them won't have their dreams fulfilled. But the good news is they'll have an opportunity to at least when they're at Iowa, hopefully ready themselves for other endeavors off the football field.
Spark CW is looking for that interview.
Spark CW, why is he calling me? We're going to call Mark the King, Spark CW. So Mark, you're the king. First of all, let me establish that. Second of all, the interview with Borcherding Johnson will likely be, I don't want to make any promises because we got a couple other things in the hopper, but likely will either be later this month or early in August. The other thing I'm running into, Mark, is I've only got so much time, and we only have so much time before the season. So no, it's good. It's a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have, to be able to provide good what I think is good content, not because of me, but because of the people who are a part of the show and the recruits and the interviews and the coaches and whatnot. So no, that'll be coming later this summer, Spark.
Okay. Wherever the king designation is coming from, yeah, I don't live up to that myself. We'll
Mark,
just stay with Voice of College Football.
I know we're running out of time here. Are we going to preview Ohio State next week?
That's a great guess, or that's a great question, I should say, because yeah, we would like to have already done that, of course.
We would, but here's the deal. We've had so much recruiting news over these past 2 weeks that I think we both can agree there was, I'm not saying we couldn't have talked to Ohio State today or last week, but I think it was fair to give these guys Caden Proctor. I mean, Iowa had its highest rated recruit in Iowa history commit since you and I last jumped on the show. So I think it was okay that we talked recruiting today. We talked a little Subway, and in general, we'll be able to finish these. We'll have to just double up on previews, which is okay.
we'll have to do that. And certainly. Well, I think we've got our Minnesota guy lined up for next week. That might be possible. I'll have to look at the schedule.
Double up Ohio State and Minnesota, maybe.
Yeah. I had plans to talk about and address a lot of different content topics here in the last 5 days, but USC and UCLA decided to join the Big Ten, and that's turned into be everything
And for
all the
anybody
possibilities from it.
For anybody who's new to or who's here wanting us to talk about, I saw a comment and I didn't mean to miss it. Let me see the comment from Michael Wheatley. He says, "An Iowa insider and fan, are you scared of UCLA and USC stealing the glory of Iowa fans?" I'll answer that question, no. If you want to know my opinion and your opinion, kind of going back and forth, you and I jumped on a live show Friday night. And so I guess we should probably, what's the title of that video, Mark, on your main channel so that people can find that?
Yeah, so we have plenty of that talk, and Corey again was kind enough to jump on Friday night, I believe it was. So the video in which we're addressing, again, there's several over there, folks. You can check out my thoughts and other people's thoughts about all of this expansion and realignment. But that particular show with Corey, let's get to the right, get to the live section here, was actually started off with, was that the same one? Yes, must have started off with that. Mike Vanderjagt live. Yeah, that was Friday night. Mike Vanderjagt live and the voice of college football. Yes.
No. It wasn't Mike Vanderjagt.
Well, he was on earlier that. Yeah.
It was the one with, you had the West Virginia guy on to start.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. College football's New World.
Okay.
Call-in show. College football's New World in caps.
Check well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do better than that, Mark. I am going to, let me find, and certainly I encourage everybody who is on here to view the entire program. But if you want to skip to where you and I are breaking things down, I'm going to throw this up if you don't mind. I'll go ahead and throw this up in the comment or the, there's the show. So search that in YouTube, College Football's New World, call-in show, West Virginia Mountaineers live. So it was the first hour and a half is you and one of your West Virginia contributors. And so if you go to the hour and 33-minute mark, you'll be able to hear you and I go back and forth, take calls, and discuss, exactly what the banner says, College Football's New World. And more content coming on my channel, believe you me, in the coming days. I recorded some interesting content with Ryan Winter of SportsStat 503, who's a contributor of yours as well. I've talked to him in the past, and he was kind enough to discuss Oregon and the Big Ten, and also kind of an interesting topic. And we can finish off this show with this, Mark. Kyler Casper. So he's committed to Oregon. He reclassed up, so he'll be there this year, I believe. But like any recruit, I have no inside information to think that Kyler Casper's doubting his decision or second guessing it. But one wonders when you have a guy who has Big Ten roots in his family. His dad lives in Arizona. His family lives in Arizona. Okay. So the idea is, well, yeah, maybe he got some Nike money in there, but I have no doubt about it. His parents wanted to see him play. He plays at Oregon. They can see him play a lot more when you have those Southern California schools, the Arizona schools right there in their backyard. All of a sudden, Mark, we may be looking at a situation where Arizona and Arizona State are not in the same conference as Oregon. USC and UCLA, we know, are not moving after this year, or I guess after 2023. So technically, it looks like they'll probably get a couple of years if he stays true to Oregon, which I would have no reason to think he won't, but it's still a topic for conversation. But it is also, it's just one that makes you furrow your brow a bit, because we don't know what Oregon, like there's all kinds of reports. Every 15 minutes, there's some dummy on social media that has a new idea, and some of them are substantial, some of them are not. But I guess my point is, we discussed, is there any possibility that Kyler Casper could be reconsidering his decision? And I got Ryan's perspective on that as an Oregon insider. And so if anybody missed that, definitely check it out. I'll throw my, I think I can throw my channel up here somewhere. Do I have a banner for my channel, Mark? You have a banner for my channel. Here we go. I'll use your banner from the Hawkeye of the Storm here on YouTube if you're new to the platform. So this channel, definitely subscribe over there and stay tuned because more content coming.
And at least one of us has a broadcaster's voice. So we bring Corey on just for the insight, of course, but also the voice.
They say voice for radio, voice for television, face for radio. Is that what they say?
Well, you don't want that, of course.
No,
That's
you
not the
don't want that.
combination to go for.
I'm glad he didn't go that far.
All right, folks. Yeah, Corey's got a lot of tremendous content on his channel, so check it out from the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube and right here at the Voice of College Football. We'll be back. Let's see. We've got about 25 minutes until we tee it back up with Nebraska football talk on our Nebraska channel.
Real quick, Mark, I think we did miss the super chat from Erica.
Oh, yes.
Any chance Coach P is coming on soon? So I told somebody else who asked that question, Erica, probably not until August, although I'll mention to him that a bunch of people are requesting him, but you like to give Coach Patterson, he's a retired guy, loves to golf and enjoys retirement. Not that he doesn't enjoy talking football, but I like to want to give him his off season. So we'll have him on sometime, at least in August.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erica. Appreciate that. We will catch everyone back here next Tuesday at 4:30 Central, and please bring a friend. And meanwhile, Nebraska coming up in 25 minutes.